You're looking live at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, site of today's South Point 400. Cashing tickets is what it's all about. So let's head to the studio for today's edition of Racers Odds. Here's your host, John Roberts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Racers Odds. What a marriage we have this weekend as sports wagering continues to grow across the country. NASCAR has come to the home of it all, Las Vegas, Nevada. This is your number one source for the stats and information that you need when wagering on NASCAR. And also, we are available on many different formats. Of course, PRN, VSiN, Sirius XM, YouTube, and also NASCAR.com, just to name a few, and growing all the time. So want to bring in our NASCAR expert, champion crew chief, Jeff Hammond. And Jeff, one thing we're going to be talking about, and you got to look at when you make your wagers this weekend, of course, is the heat. 100 plus degrees in Las Vegas.
Yeah, you had to bring that up. And the one thing I see right now, folks, is the big challenge is how quick will this racetrack cool off? It's extremely warm right now. It means it's got no grip. So once it starts cooling down, they turn the lights on and get a little bit of shade. That's when the challenges are going to come. We're going to find out real quick who's got the best crew chiefs, who's making the right adjustments to keep it right all the way to the end.
So now to get you more insight, let's check in with our handicapping expert. That, of course, the editor of Point Spread Weekly is Steve Mackinnon, joins us now. And Steve, what's the grade on Las Vegas? What is the handicap ability of this particular racetrack?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on once again. Great to be back. Great to be actually in Las Vegas today, and I think you were right about touching upon the heat index. Guy coming from Wisconsin notices it a little more than most, so it is very hot on that track. The handicap ability grade for Las Vegas is a B+, meaning it is fairly conducive to statistical handicapping methods. In fact, the last race we had here back in March, there was only one guy that actually finished out of the race. So those types of races, you usually get a better handle on using stats to find your winners.
All right, Steve, thank you very much. Back with you in just a second. But now let's take a look at one of the guys that is starting off the playoffs pretty much the exact way you want to. We now have 10 races to go before NASCAR's biggest prize will be handed out. We'll have the odds for you a little later. And Steve actually has some simulation for us about who might be your champion this year. But right now, Clint Bowyer, one of the drivers in the playoffs, is off to a great start. He's starting up on the pole, and he's certainly hoping that that kind of speed translates over into the race.
You know, I think we've seen in our sport before in other series and things like that, cars that are, you know, bad fast on Saturday or on qualifying day sometimes can't you know, hold it, you know, for 400 miles around there. That's going to be a tall order for tomorrow. Hey, I know obviously if those things are that fast, they're trimmed out a little, you know, quite a bit for that speed. That being said, you do make adjustments and go back into race trim, and we all know clean air is very, very important on a racetrack like Las Vegas, and you know, we have that is in our favor. We've got to work hard. I'm going to have to be aggressive.
And you will find Clint Bowyer in a number of interesting matchups and groupings, and also in terms of odds to win the race. He is one driver certainly to keep an eye on. Now, Jeff Hammond, we're in the playoffs now. Drivers are going to have to go for it when they have the opportunity. No more being careful. A win right now guarantees you a spot in the next round. But Clint Bowyer has top tens in the last 3 races this season on the pole. Could be a good bet today.
Well, I think so, because the thing is, when you talk about momentum, I'm going off of what we saw last weekend in Indy. Had a lot of pressure on him to make it into the playoffs. I really believe that this could wind up being a breakout race for Clint Bowyer, as much as I like him to maybe win this race here today, because I think he's almost like a long shot by some of the odds makers. I like that as far as having an opportunity to maybe kind of steal some money from them, because I feel like he is motivated. I think we saw last weekend Kevin Harvick and that 4 crew, how good they were. And basically, he got out of the car, I'm talking about Bowyer, and said, look, that car can do it. We can do it. He qualified third at Indy. He's first this weekend. They're getting stronger, not weaker, so I look for them to have a good day.
And had you watched Racers Odds last week, you would have heard Jeff Hammond say that his sure bet for last week was Kevin Harvick winning at the Brickyard, and that's exactly what happened. In just a few moments here, we're going to have some of our sure bets for the weekend, some of the ones that we're looking at that we find more interesting than some of the other ones, and maybe some of the better value bets along the way. But right now, let's get you out to the racetrack and check in with a good friend, Pat Patterson. Pat?
Well, good afternoon, Johnny. Great to be with you on a very hot day in Las Vegas as we get ready for round one of the playoffs for the Monster Energy Cup cars here. Last time I checked, well, a little bit over 100 degrees, looking for about 105 degrees this afternoon. That's going to send temperatures in the race car, wow, up to about 145, 150 degrees in the race car. Everybody knows that this racetrack is going to change. We're starting late in the afternoon. We will get some shade, and we probably will get lights on later on in this race this afternoon. And of course, the key story is hydration for the drivers and how well can they manage what these cars are going to do and how they're going to change throughout the afternoon. One thing we know for sure, a lot of excitement here in Las Vegas to kick off the playoffs for a second time this year. Story inside the garage area basically boils down to, Kyle Busch has not won in quite some time. He needs to get back to his winning ways. He said earlier this week he's going to do that this week here in his hometown. Denny Hamlin, wow, how can you bet against what this guy's done? And of course, last week, Kevin Harvick, right on time, came back and was a big winner at Indianapolis. So, hot racetrack. Drivers are going to be hot. Racetrack is really going to change this afternoon as we go into darkness and get the shade on the racetrack. But those are certainly some of the big stories this week here in Vegas so far.
Pat, one of the things I'm wondering about, Ford was first at Indy last week. They're on the pole again this week. Can they make it two in a row here at Vegas?
Yeah, I hear you, Jeff. There's no question about it. We got 4 Fords qualified up there in the very front of the field here today at Las Vegas. And Clint Boyer, man, it's been such a drought since this guy picked up a pole position. So Boyer, hoping today that they can get the bad luck off and maybe get the playoffs started with a big win here. Ryan Newman is in a Ford. Ryan Newman made the playoffs, and he's looking to get out of the box early and get off the bottom of the points and get someplace up there so he can avoid early elimination in this first round. But does Harvick do what I think he can do again today, just like he did last week? It'd be hard to bet against him. In fact, most of the sports book, Jeff, has got him right at the top of the list when it comes to guys to bet your money on today. All right, so we're going to have fun in Vegas. Round one of the playoffs. You guys have fun back there. Remember, make the right bet.
And Pat, thank you very much. One of the drivers we definitely got to look at is kind of a puzzling one when we head into this race is Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch has one win here, but it was about 10 years ago, and also he has the fastest 10-lap average. His performance really hasn't put him in the position of the odds makers where they have him right now, but obviously they know something because he's unloaded fast. He is the regular season champion. So, Jeff, what do you think? Is it too much on Kyle Busch right now?
It's gonna be real hard to kind of like go against what I think, and yes, it's going to be hard because the Fords have been dominant here at this particular racetrack. Toyota hasn't been able to do anything with them, neither has Chevrolet, and really, the thing is, I want to bring Steve in here and say, Steve, to me, when I start looking the way that I analyze a field, it doesn't tell me right now that Kyle Busch is a guy that I really need to be fearful of, even though he is the fastest in a 10-lap average.
Well, obviously, any types of odds you normally get with Kyle Busch are based on who he is. One of the things going for him actually for this race in terms of my simulation is he has the top rating for the track grouping. So these mile and a halves, he's one of the top drivers you're going to want to be following around. So I wouldn't discount his credits or his chances today, but there's certainly better options if you ask me.
All right, so Steve, with that in mind, let's now take a look at what we call some of our best bets of the week, some of the things we're looking particularly at. Steve, why don't you go ahead and lead us off here? What that's available in terms of a wager do you like so far this weekend?
So the wager I'm looking at first is Denny Hamlin in a matchup against Martin Truex. This is a matchup between the two, if you want to call them top contenders for the title, but it's not exactly the way each of them is running at this point. In fact, in terms of my ratings, recent track averages, Denny Hamlin's third, Martin Truex is 10th. Track grouping, Hamlin 7th, Martin Truex 10th. Two pretty good edges there for Hamlin, and I'm not afraid to lay the 135 in that matchup.
Okay, Jeff Hammond, what do you say? What do you like so far this weekend?
Well, the one I'm looking at happens to be, Kyle Busch versus Joey Logano. I mean, you got a guy like Joey Logano who's been pretty much on fire when it comes to this racetrack. And, Kyle's, we keep saying, I'm looking at his track record here at Indy, not so much at what he's done at the 1.5 miles. And it tells me that his average at this particular racetrack is 7.6 over the last 5 races, where Joey Logano's is 3. So I'm leaning toward Joey Logano at plus 120 versus the minus 140.
So one of the drivers that certainly had a roller coaster ride this season, but it ended on an up note, is Clint Bowyer. He's had some down times this year, but also in the last 3 races has finished in the top 10. He's coming on at the right time of the season, so I definitely like his matchup against young William Byron. William Byron has a best finish of 16th at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and also I think that when we start talking about the heat transitioning from the daytime into the nighttime, that this does definitely favor the veteran drivers. Clint Bowyer's been around for a while. This will be William Byron, only his 4th start at this racetrack. So there are our best bets of the week. We got a lot more coming your way here on Racers Odds. We're going to take a look at all the available head-to-head matchups. We'll go into some groupings, and we'll also have Steve Makinen's simulation as to what may happen today and also what may happen in the playoffs as well. Now, at the bottom of your screen throughout the show, of course, we have our countdown clock. We have our odds for individual drivers, and the drivers in the playoffs will have the asterisks by their name. So stay with us. Much more to come on this edition of Racers Odds.
A numbers game with Gil Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, our pleasure to have Jeremy Piven in studio.
I'm really good friends with Julian Edelman. He and I are very similar size and almost identical, except he's an elite athlete. I'm not. Other than that, everything lines
Same
up.
person.
Yeah, same. I run the same routes.
Every time we see Julian Edelman on Sunday, we'll be thinking of you.
There you go.
A numbers game with Gil Alexander. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. VSiN.com and Sirius XM 204. VSiN, the news you need to win.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the world. You've heard ads from other companies offering to help taxpayers only if they owe over $10,000. Here at Platinum Tax Defenders, we're A-plus rated with the Better Business Bureau, and we're proud to be one of the only tax firms in the country who understands that people who owe less than $10,000 need help just as badly. The IRS doesn't care how much money you owe. They'll still garnish your wages and even seize your assets. So whether you owe just a few $1,000s or hundreds of thousands, call now for your free tax consultation. If you qualify, we may even be able to reduce your tax debt down to a small fraction of what you owe. So don't wait until the IRS seizes your property and garnishes your wages. Call 800-856-1330 and get your tax problem resolved once and for all. That number again is 800-856-1330. 800-856-1330.
Hi, this is Doug Rice for the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome once again, everybody, to Racers Odds. This is your number one source for stats and information when it comes to betting on NASCAR. And no better place to go than our handicapping expert, Steve Makinen, for the simulation. Now, Steve, you run a ton of different simulations and come out with who's going to do what. I like the fact that we're at a racetrack where you graded out at a B+, but what did some of the simulations say?
Well, the simulation clearly says Harvick's the man to beat today. He has a average finish of about 3 on 1,000 runs. So he's very strong here, 3.7 to be in fact. Then there's a group of about 6 guys after that who you're going to want to consider as contenders. But according to the numbers, it would look like you're only going to have a different winner if something should falter for Harvick. So there's a couple wild cards that I kind of want to get Hammond's view on this. 2 different things for this race. Obviously, I'm sure we're touching upon a lot with the track changing with the nighttime finish. And we've had a couple of those in the last 3 races. So not exactly new ground here, but the one thing I'd like to hear a little more of what Hammond thinks about that. And then the other thing is there's sort of a misconception among fans and maybe bettors too, that a lot of these tracks are 1.5 miles. The truth is this is the first 1.5 mile race here in the series since June 30th at Chicago. So there hasn't been a lot of recent results that you can really go by. So in my opinion, it makes me turn to momentum as the biggest factor for this race.
No, and see, I agree with you on that. You got to look. One of the variables I think a lot of people need to be made aware of when we come into the playoffs or places like Indianapolis, which are back-to-back right now, a lot of these teams are bringing out new cars, new ideas, things that they've learned throughout the season, and you may not see it until the playoffs because they've been holding back on it a little bit. They want to come out all guns a-blazing, and they don't want to give nobody else an opportunity to see what they've done to their car. Sometimes it's little things that teams will pick up. So you're going to see the best of the best. And right now, I think Kevin Harvick and Stewart-Haas Racing, they have unloaded their best stuff last weekend and again this weekend. Just purely look at how fast they are at the front of the field. So they've gotten ready. They've kind of like put their game faces on, and that's one of the things that's going to challenge everybody is who is prepared for the playoffs. Right now, I feel like number one in an organization-wise has to be Stewart-Haas Racing. I think they're prepared for about anything with their simulations of what they need to do to their cars based off of what little bit of adjusting they did on the 4 last weekend and as good as their cars were and how they performed overall.
Hey, Steve, there's a reason why we do not see people outside of the championship group not winning these races. That's why it's always a wild card and a long shot for somebody that's not in the playoffs or back in the day, even in the chase. It was very rare that somebody would break in and kind of break up the party. Do you see anybody out there outside of the top 16 that may have a chance of beating the odds and getting in there and actually upsetting this group of the strongest guys throughout the year?
I wouldn't go so far as to say I could see somebody winning, but obviously we've got some top 5 candidates. I think a guy like Daniel Suarez has shown some great speed on a good team. Obviously, the team we've been discussing. So they got Jimmy Johnson. Maybe with the pressure of not being in the playoffs off him now, he could find a good run here. He's done well at Vegas historically, and he also ran very well at the last 1.5 miles, which was Chicago. And then if you consider that too, Alex Bowman won that race. We haven't even brought him up yet. And then maybe Ricky Stenhouse has shown some speed at tracks like this too.
And what's also kind of interesting is when we look at that sort of thing as who is, like Steve said, Jimmy Johnson, he's the only non-playoff driver in the top 10 when you look at 10-lap averages.
Yeah, I think he qualified well, qualified ninth. So I think everything that Steve is bringing out gives you, if you're a Jimmy Johnson fan, it doesn't mean you need to run and hide because he's not in the playoffs. It may be an opportunity to take advantage of the fact that he's got more momentum right now and maybe more determination than ever to show what could have been if they made that crew chief change a little earlier, see where they can put something together. But I'll throw you somebody out there that kind of, I think, showed up on radar big time last week at Indianapolis, and he's been pretty decent here at Las Vegas, and I think he might be motivated also. And that's Paul Menard driving for the Wood brothers. They do have a strong relationship with Team Penske, and he's had 2 top 10 finishes here in the last 2 races at Vegas, coming off of a good run last weekend at Indianapolis. He could be somebody that's kind of a sleeper in this field today that could have a pretty good race car.
So Paul Menard's definitely a guy to look at, and also we're going to be looking at some of the matchups and some of the groupings as well. So this time around, Steve, do you feel like there are the best value? We seem to see it week in and week out that the matchups, the head-to-head matchups, are where the value really is.
Absolutely, week in and week out, we got a be looking at those. If you're looking to actually do some investing as a bettor here, those are the best way to do this. I mean, you're not paying premiums on the vig on these long shots you're taking, and you really don't have to worry about more than the two drivers you're placing the matchup on. You really got to only concentrate on their efforts. So if you can handicap those two guys, you know their past histories at tracks, you know their momentums. It's easily the best way to take advantage of.
Yeah, so a lot of interesting matchups to look at here coming up, and on Racers Odds, we will have those for you. We're going to talk about what drivers have what odds as single drivers going after the win, but also some of the head-to-head matchups and some of the more interesting groups. Again, the groups are kind of hard to pick because your driver has to beat three other drivers, but we'll look closely at them and get our experts' opinions on where some of the wise bets may be back in the field, maybe who some of the dark horses are, the sleepers that may come through and actually make you some money in the long run here. So stay with us, everybody. Still a lot more to come on this edition of Racers Odds.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Jake was in big trouble with the IRS. He owed how much?
$92,000.
Ouch. The IRS left no room for Jake to breathe.
They put a lien on my house, took all the money out of my bank account, took money out of my paychecks. So it was a nightmare.
He needed help fast.
I figured that all these companies were the same until I called Federal Tax Management. You could just tell they knew what they were talking about. Right then and there, I felt like I had some hope.
Stop the liens, levies, and garnishments fast and qualify for one of several special IRS programs that could reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. So, how'd it go for Jake?
They did what they said they would do. They came through for me. I ended up saving an unbelievable amount. I was so jazzed. I was extremely happy.
If you owe more than $10,000 in back taxes, take Jake's advice.
Give Federal Tax Management a phone call. If they help me, they can help anybody.
Call the Federal Tax Management Hotline now. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Racers Odds. I am John Roberts alongside of Jeff Hammond, Steve Makinen with you here today, and Pat Patterson giving you all the information and stats you need when wagering on NASCAR. This is a huge weekend for NASCAR because as the momentum continues to grow for sports wagering across the country, we now have NASCAR in the capital of it all, Las Vegas, and also we now have the playoffs starting 10 races until we determine who gets the top prize in all of NASCAR and all of motorsports as well, that trophy for the Cup Series. And also, by the time we're said and done, there is a lot of money to be gained throughout these playoffs. So right now, we're going to go to head-to-head matchups and get the guys in on this one and see what we are looking at and what we like. These are some of the difficult ones in our group number one. These are some of the top dogs that we're looking at. But first of all, guys, I find this very interesting when you look at the matchup between Brad Keselowski and Kevin Harvick. Two things about this. Brad Keselowski has won 3 of the last 7 races at Vegas. Kevin Harvick has won 3 of the last 7 races this year. Steve Makinen, what do you think about this one? Where would you go?
Well, this is a really interesting one because of the stats you just mentioned. Now, one of the things I'm looking at with Harvick is he's had, I believe, 2 of the top 3 runs here historically at Vegas with most laps led. So he really has a handle on this. He's been feast or famine. He's had a couple bad finishes recently, but when he runs well, he does really well.
So, Hammond, what do you think? I mean, Harvick has shown speed in the last couple of races. He's shown speed. Vegas has been his own personal playground for a while.
I mean, the only thing right there that kind of makes me a little bit nervous is having to give up that much to be able to have Kevin versus, against Brad. But other than that, I'm with Steve on the thing. When you look at the numbers and knowing that the problems he had in those finishes were mechanically driven. I mean, something broke on the car, but at the time he was running inside the top 5 and running really well like he's always done here at Vegas. I mean, Vegas is a great racetrack for him. It's almost as good as Phoenix, which is basically his playing in the backyard whenever you want to look at what his numbers are when you get to Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Penske Racing as a whole has kind of had a grip on Las Vegas for a while alongside of Kevin Harvick. If it wasn't him, it was one of the Penske Racing drivers. Joey Logano is certainly a favorite and involved in many interesting matchups. Let's hear what Joey has to say heading into this weekend.
I do think this track kind of fits into our wheelhouse. It fits into, I think, Ford's wheelhouse as far as the engines and the Roush Yates program. I think is maybe our strengths are here. I think we've been able to do a good job at finding that balance to get over the bumps in 1 and 2, yet still have grip around the rest of the racetrack. It's never perfect, right? You're never as good as you want, but it seems like we've been able to put together a pretty good package here at the.
Yeah, a little better than pretty good for Penske as they have been dominating lately, but in between it's been Kevin Harvick winning these races as well. So now let's move on to our second group of matchups, get some other drivers involved here, and this is the first time we're starting to see in this list some of the drivers that, are a little bit further back, maybe not the kind of favorites for the weekend in terms of individual drivers. Steve, do you see anything here that piques your interest?
Well, obviously, I had the Hamlin matchup before against Truex, and to be honest, I'm not afraid to go against Truex on another matchup too. The Kyle Larson matchup, he's a pretty sizable underdog there against Truex. Truex just he doesn't have it clicking like he's shown in the past, and Larson seems to be coming around. There's some tracks coming up here in the next few races where he looks to be a good shot to for sure make it to the round of 12, and he's going to probably need a good run to do that here today.
So, yeah, looking at Kyle Larson at Las Vegas, you might call him not a hot driver, but a warm driver. He's top 3 in the last 4 races and runner-up twice. So if you're looking for a guy for a good run, maybe it's Kyle Larson. If you're looking for a guy for a win, perhaps it is not Kyle Larson. What do you think of his performance, Jeff Hammond, so far this weekend?
It's kind of like, what we've been coming kind of used to, but I'm kind of like looking back once again and looking at the numbers when he's been here. He's got good numbers here. I mean, and he has been getting stronger. So you have to kind of believe that after what we saw at Indy, what we've seen here most recently, in the spring, that he's a guy you got to at least respect. And the only reason I have any kind of qualms at all about some of this stuff is that the guys that they're matching him up against have won here. And that's the only thing I think that sometimes it makes me have to pause is whether or not he can close the deal. He's been able to run good, but I'm looking at closing the deal.
Yeah, so Steve, even as Kyle finds himself an underdog to the Kyle Larson Eric Jones matchup is one here that I find relatively interesting. Even though Eric Jones, of course, coming in there, Kyle Larson is the underdog to him. But by the same token, though, I would be apt to take that because Eric Jones has not had a good record at Las Vegas in his short amount of time there.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is Jones is the biggest dropper since my initial simulation came out. He was projected second, and in fact, it's going to be in the track program this week. If anybody is at the track right now, look and has a mobile app or mobile sports betting app, they can take advantage of that. I got to run some of the initial numbers there, but Jones dropped from 2nd to 9th after qualifying in practice here, and he's actually fallen behind Larson on the simulation. So good matchup there for Larson too, I think.
Yeah, interesting to see that also, Stephen. While we're on that subject, what else is moving? Because we see it, like you said, after practice, after qualifying, these things tend to move.
Well, the simulation, the factors that go into it, certain tracks, the qualifying and practice mean more than others, obviously. But for here, they mean a good deal. I mean, you got to be able to show good speed at these 1.5 miles. Daniel Hemrick dropped a lot, 5 spots. The biggest movers upward were Kurt Busch and Daniel Suarez.
So also as we take a look at this matchups, this third group of matchups, let's move on there as we say goodbye to those number 2 groups of matchups. And now we take a look at some of the other drivers that are involved in these matchups. Of course, Eric Almirola, he's one of the drivers that hasn't been hot as of late. And also I find this some of the matchups involving our pole sitter of Clint Bowyer being relatively interesting. Bowyer feels like now that he has made it into the playoffs, that he's going to trend upward, and Bowyer is also pretty confident that his team can go a long way now that they're here.
We've done a good job, my race team, Mike, and all the guys on the 14 car of kind of prepared ourselves for these playoffs. Things ratchet up in the playoffs. Pressure is intense. You've got to be able to perform your best in the most extreme situations. And, we've kind of been there for the last month and a half as we've kind of grinded it out, trying to look over our shoulders and make sure that we make all the right decisions. Don't give up too many stage points here don't sacrifice here to be good on the second one or go for a win or, whatever the case may be. You've got to read every situation accordingly and pull an audible if needed. Those are the things you have to do to survive and go to the next round within these playoffs as well. So, again, momentum, you're coming off at 3 good finishes with us. We're building, timing is everything. And certainly it's been 12 damn years since I've been on pole, huh? Started off the playoffs on a pole. I do remember, I think we won that race, by the way, in New Hampshire. So,
Yeah, they did, actually, and then there was a little bit of controversy afterwards after they won that race, but hopefully that doesn't happen to them this time around if they're able to stay up front and finish where they start. But, Steve, just say for instance, I were to throw $10 down on this Clint Bowyer and perhaps let's throw out a William Byron. Clint Bowyer being even money and William Byron being a minus 120 in this matchup. What happens to my $10?
Well, according to my simulations, you're a big winner. Bowyer looks good. Boyer looks pretty good for this week. He's got a projected 11th. Byron is down at 15th. So I for that type of money, a 4 separation on simulation, I'd go for that.
Yeah. So even money means I throw 10 down, I get 10 back, right? Plus my initial 10.
Uh-huh.
All right,
correct.
So, all right, at least I'm going in the right direction according to Steve's simulation as well. Hey, so we got to grab us a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to look at some of the groupings and some of the more interesting drivers involved in groups. They have qualified all over the place, but they find themselves together, and you might be a little bit surprised who is favored in one of these groups and what he's going to have to do to cash in for his fans. Stay with us, everybody. This is Racers Odds.
VSiN is the Vegas Stats and Information Network. VSiN is analysis that's always on the money.
The total on this game, 8 flat.
VSiN is the home of legendary broadcaster Brent Musburger.
I do want to talk about the next big thing in Las Vegas.
VSiN is your all-access pass behind the counter of a Las Vegas sportsbook.
Trends don't pay the rent. They're looking at the number.
VSiN, what are the odds? Find out on Sirius XM Channel 204.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
We like to think of it as the multivitamin of digestive health.
It's the only product to combine all natural ingredients known for the digestive health properties into a single patented product. Praxid also comes in easy-to-carry packs. Praxid relieves, restores, and maintains a healthy digestive system. Praxid is available here for only $39.95. Shipping and handling is free, and your money back is guaranteed.
To take advantage of this special radio offer, call now 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735. Again, 1-800-829-5735.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody. This is your number one source for sports scores and information, for stats and information when it comes to wagering on NASCAR's top series. Once again, pretty cool weekend for us. Not only are the playoffs starting, but also NASCAR has come to Las Vegas. And as everybody starts to jump on the betting bandwagon, we're having a lot of fun as well because we're in Vegas, the capital of it all.
Yeah, but excuse me, when you use the term, it's pretty cool. It's only cool in the studio. Here in Las Vegas right now, it's hotter than Hades out there. I can tell you that.
Yeah, 100 plus degrees out there right now.
That.
Yeah,
don't
so that is going to be difficult on cruise. And we don't want to say it's a dry heat because 102 is 102.
How many shorts would you go through out there?
I would go through several.
Okay,
I would be through several already at this point. So one of the places that you can place your wager, of course, is in groups. And these groups are put together by odds makers to try to get even betting on all sides of this thing. But this is a difficult thing. Not only does your driver have to have a good day, but in order for you to cash in, this is the place where a driver has to beat 3 other drivers. And when you look at the first group that we have out here, well, that is a difficult one to pick right now because out of the drivers there, Keselowski and Joey Logano, of course, they are Penske drivers. They have been kicking some butt lately and also on the racetrack at Vegas as well. Kevin Harvick, again, you could call it a personal playground for him lately at Vegas because when one of those two drivers isn't winning, it has been Kevin Harvick. But also Kyle Busch. This is his hometown track where he has only won once before, but last 7 races, he was in the top 5 4 times. So, Steve Mackinnon, when you look at this and you look at how even everything is right there in terms of the numbers, is this a group you want to go to or you want to stay away from?
Well, it's tough. I mean, you got to really like one of those drivers because you're fading 3 other pretty strong drivers. Now, obviously, my simulation, we talked about this before, looks pretty strong for Harvick. And if you want to just not risk the wager on to win, this is a good option at plus 230.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, we've all kind of felt like that Kevin was going to be the guy you got to beat down here this weekend. So if you're going to wind up winning it all, you got to beat these 4 guys no matter what, along with the rest of the field. So I guess it has to go back to not only your favorite, but also whether or not you're confident enough and will risk the amount of money for the wager.
And, Jeff, this is a time of year that not only drivers shine, but pit crews have to shine as well. One little mistake could cost a driver a win and potentially a championship, and some of these teams have put together some smoking hot, but pardon the pun, pit crews right now, especially Harvick's group and Kyle Busch's group. They're getting those guys down and away on a very, very consistent basis.
Well, a lot like their drivers right now, the pit crews are just as good as the drivers. So when you look at this group, there is no advantage against either one. It's just making who doesn't make a mistake getting down pit road, who doesn't make a mistake during the course of it. They're pretty much flawless, whenever it comes time to making sure they get it done right.
Yeah, that Penske group with Austin Cindric had some trouble on pit road last night in the Xfinity Series race, and you can see how costly that can actually be. So, Steve, let's move on to Group B in our groups. And there you have Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, and Eric Jones. Kyle Larson is just the perennial runner-up. It seems like he's Mr. Second Place. It seems like he is the underdog here to some of these other ones. Maybe this is a wise one. Maybe Kyle Larson shines in this group and really pays out because of his odds.
Yeah, being a runner-up is not a bad thing for this particular wager because he can finish second. Did you win your wager? Seeing him 4th on this list is somewhat surprising to me. I've shared my feelings about Truex this week and how Jones dropped in the simulation. So Larson could be a pretty nicely priced option at plus 320.
I think if I'm looking at this one, I'm going Kyle Larson. What do you think, Hammond?
I think I'd stay away from it.
Stay away from the whole bet.
Well, the thing is right now, out of the group right now, if I had to look at somebody that I feel comfortable about, it would wind up being Denny Hamlin more than anything else. I think he's the guy who's been able to fight back each and every week, even with a backup car last week at Indianapolis. He's able to rebound and get up there. He was inside the top 5 until the last lap. He got past and went to 6th. But I feel more confident about him than just about anybody else that can get the job done against a group like this.
All right, Group C, also full of playoff contenders as well. Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch, and Alex Bowman. Now, Kurt Busch has always said he wanted to be the Busch brother to get that hometown victory first. Alex Bowman has not been trending in the right direction. That whole team not running well at all since the Chicago victory. So, Steve, what do you think about that group right there? It seems to me like they're a little bit, that there are too many unknowns there going in.
I actually have a very interesting option on this particular group. If my simulation or my track ratings here show Chase Elliott is the 18th ranked driver in these mile and a halves. He's got 17 other drivers on the track better than him. So if I'm talking about that, I'm wiping him off that list right now.
Okay, so one down.
You just said it about Bowman. He's trending the wrong way. He's in this group because he won at Chicago 3 months ago. I'd wipe him out too. You have 2 drivers left here. You could take both of these options, and you'd still make a pretty nice take if one of those guys takes this group.
Interesting take on that, Jeff.
Well, and the thing is, he brings up interesting points. When you start looking at the mile and a half, you start looking at how guys are trending. The only one out of this group that's had a win on the mile and a half recently would be, Kurt Busch. And the thing is, Ryan Blaney, when it comes to Las Vegas, has been running very consistently and finishing very consistently. So you'd have to kind of like figure out which one do you want to bet on here, because I think his point is with Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman, you take those guys out, you just got to figure out which one you want to bet on, Kurt or Ryan right now. If I was leaning towards somebody tonight because he's in a Ford and it's a Penske Ford, I'd go with Ryan Blaney.
All right, the rule of elimination there in Group C we saw. Okay, Group D provides some interesting wagers as well. This is the first time we see a non-playoff driver in a group, and if we are consistent with what we said earlier, when you match up Clint Bowyer and William Byron, Clint Bowyer is starting on the pole. William Byron has never finished better than 16th in 3 races here. But, Steve, if there might be one here to look at, if something perhaps might happen to Clint Bowyer, Daniel Suarez is qualified well and 14th when it comes to top 10 speeds in top 10 lap averages, so not too high up on that one, where we find Clint Bowyer just behind him as well. So this one may be, again, a little bit difficult.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this group is these guys are 11 through 15 on my simulation. This is a tough one to pick.
Yeah, a little too
I'll
close.
pass on it.
Yeah, okay, I think I would too.
I think what's interesting, out of everybody, when you look at Las Vegas and the numbers in their recent finishes and stuff, Eric Almirola is the only one that kind of shines as far as being more of a top 10 finisher than even Clint Bowyer. So, if there is a guy that kind of stands out in my book, would wind up being Eric Almirola.
Okay, interesting. So that is Group D. Let's move on now to Group E, which features some of the drivers that qualified well but are we have non-playoff contenders here. Of course, Matt Benedetto has been surprising everybody over the past couple of weeks. And, Steve, you mentioned a second ago how you felt as if Ricky Stenhouse was showing some speed this weekend.
Yeah, back in March, he was really fast. In fact, he was going to be one of the favorites, I recall, looking at that as a potential, well, not a favorite, but a surprise driver. As I look at this one, though, the Benedetto's, even last week, he didn't have good speeds in the weekend going into it. He still turned out a good run at Indy. So I think he's got the momentum going the right way. I actually saw him at the fitness room at the South Point the other day. Yeah. I talked to him. He seemed pretty excited about the weekend and about his new ride. So a lot of good things going in his direction. I'll look at him in this one.
Okay, so not a bad one right there. I believe I would have to lean towards that. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, with that one exception, I like the momentum, because that's one thing that Steve and I both kind of agree on. He's got momentum on his side, but the only thing I can say, Las Vegas finishes, Ricky Stenhouse did have a 6th-place finish here in the spring, so he does know this racetrack, and he could wind up being a spoiler out of that group against the momentum. That's the only reason I say that. And he's in a Ford. Once again, I'm worried about those Fords tonight. I think they've got a little bit got something working for them when it comes to their engine package as well as their aero package over a lot of the other makes.
Okay, so the countdown is on just about a half hour before green flag time, and we'll see that countdown clock in the bottom of your screen throughout Racers Odds. But as we move on to our final group, Group F, when you look at the drivers here, the one name that's got to stick out is Bubba Wallace, coming off one of his best runs ever at Indy last week. There was a lot of talk about that 43 team and a lot of talk about Bubba. When we saw this matchup in these groups, we looked at it at first earlier in the week and said, man, Bubba may be the guy to go to here. But after qualifying, and when you hear what Bubba had to say about his car this weekend, you may think again.
The biggest thing, as I keep saying, is, we're such a small team, and, that was our brand new car that we had run at Michigan 2. And so that car won't be in rotation again until Kansas, I believe. So for us, this weekend, this car is what we ran last time here. But obviously since then, we've made a lot of improvements to our cars, to our team, to better our program. So.
All right, so Bubba always tells it like it is. There's no question. He's always told us exactly what is on his mind. I think he's being very honest with us this time around. And once again, when you do look at that group, Michael McDowell's got himself starting in the top 10 there. And also Bubba Wallace is starting 31st with what he calls one of their older cars, and hoping to get that newer one back out on the racetrack very shortly here as the final 10 races of the season are upon us. We got to grab a quick break. When we come back, we'll get more opinion, more analysis from our experts as we get ready to go racing in Las Vegas as sports wagering continues to seek momentum across the country. This weekend, we find NASCAR in the capital of it all, Las Vegas, Nevada. Back with more Racers Odds in just a moment.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Do you have an idea for an invention or new product? Do you think companies would be interested in your idea? Do you want to try to get a patent? Then call InventHelp now. InventHelp keeps your idea confidential and explains every step of the invention process. We create professional materials representing your idea and submit it to companies who are looking for new ideas. We have more than 9,000 companies who have agreed to review ideas in confidence. If a company shows interest in manufacturing your invention, we can negotiate on your behalf. We have helped over 10,000 clients receive patents. We also offer services including 3D modeling and animation demonstrating your idea, prototyping services, and we use state-of-the-art technology to show InventHelp client ideas to additional companies. Join the thousands of people just like you who chose InventHelp to pursue their idea. We are experienced. We are working for you. We are InventHelp.
Call us for free information at 1-800-542-6751, 1-800-542-6751, 1-800-542-6751.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
Hi, this is Doug Rice for the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. It's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back to Racers Odds, everybody. I'm John Roberts with Jeff Hammond, Steve Makinen, and also Pat Patterson as well. We're giving you the information and statistics you need to make a wise wager on NASCAR's Top Series. Once again, we're in the middle of it all this weekend at Las Vegas. So, guys, right now we're going to take a look at individual drivers and their odds to win. I don't find it surprising, Steve Makinen, whatsoever, that when odds makers look at who's going to do well here, they would put Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick both at plus 400. No surprise there, right?
No surprise. Favorites for the series, favorite for this race. So,
yeah, no question there. And also then right behind them, the two other drivers that have proven lately at Las Vegas that we better keep an eye on them. Plus 600 is both Brad Keselowski, Jeff, and Joey Logano.
No, you got to look at the numbers and look at the results, and they back each other up in that position they find themselves in. Makes a lot of sense. So you got to just basically figure out, out of those top four, is there a winner that makes you happy?
So we always look at favorites, and then there's some dark horses, and then there's some way long shots. But in value in this one, Steve, when I'm looking at it, I kind of like Denny Hamlin at 10-1 as something that might pay me back some money, and a guy who could legitimately win this race as he's been on fire lately.
Yeah, you touch on a key thing there for the value you get, because winning a race and finishing top five, that's two different things. Hamlin has proven he can win races. 10-1 does seem like a pretty nice price for him.
Okay, is there anybody back in the pack here, Steve, that we should be looking at, that we should be perhaps looking at as maybe sometimes, when people talk about going on a long shot, I mean, Daniel Suarez is not that bad of a shot right now with his qualifying, with his 10-lap average. Jimmy Johnson as well. Out of the non-playoff drivers, Jimmy Johnson has the fastest 10-lap average. Steve, do you like Suarez or Johnson as a long shot?
Winning these playoff races is a completely different animal, in my opinion, than even the regular season races. So I would probably try to concentrate my efforts on the playoff drivers.
Yeah, I think you're correct on that, because history shows us that as well, right, Jeff?
I feel the same way. I think we talk about it all the time. It's very difficult for somebody to surprise one of these playoff teams, especially in the first round. And the guy that I'm looking at, Steve, so we should think about this. I'm liking our pole sitter, Clint Boyer, at 20-1. I just got this gut feeling that he's ready to break out, get his first win of the year, coming off the heels of such a dominant performance by Kevin Harvick. I think I could see these two guys battling all the way to the end tonight.
I'm actually not going to disagree with you on that. I'm going to throw another option out there as somebody who has shown some speed this weekend, and it's we haven't even talked about him much. It's Kurt Busch, Kyle's brother. He's a really good car in practice, and being Las Vegas, his hometown, I'm sure he wants to do his best to get his playoff run off to a good start.
So, guys, so much has to come together for a driver and a team to win one of these races in NASCAR's Top Series. Even more has to come together to win a championship. So at the beginning of the season, when we're looking at odds to win championships, you probably really shouldn't be digging too deep in the pocketbook at that point, because things change throughout the weekend. But, Steve, now we are in the playoffs. Now we know who is poised as we get closer. Now we can, I think, look a little bit closer. And you also ran your simulation on these playoff drivers as well for the big prize.
Yeah, there's some pretty interesting things I was able to kind of uncover here. Obviously, when you're looking at NASCAR, does this right for the guys who dominate in the regular season, and I mean they're rightfully getting a lot of bonus points. They have to really go bad to not advance round by round if you're talking about the favorites. However, if you're looking maybe a little bit further down the road, maybe down a little lower in the standings, Kyle Larson. I think he's got a shot here to start the chase or the playoffs in a pretty good fashion. And then the guy that Hammond likes this week, Boyer, he's an interesting one to look at in the middle group of races. In the first three races, my simulation has him about a 10.5 average finish. In races 4 through 6, he's down around 6. So he's got 3 real strong tracks there. Dover, Kansas among them. Talladega, I think, is the other one. But I could easily see him getting into the round, the 8. And if he has that type of momentum, if he's running real well at that time, he's obviously on a good team. He's a guy you could maybe see make it to Miami eventually.
Yeah, and I like the way, guys, let's face it, when we look at the way these teams come into things like the playoffs, like a race, you have to look a little bit at their attitude, at their mindset, because there's so much pressure on the pit crews to perform, so much pressure on the drivers to perform. And like you said a minute ago, Steve, it's really, really hard to bet against any of these playoff drivers not to win a race. But also when you look at certain drivers and what the momentum is said, that right now Clint Bowyer seems to be a bit of a darling. I really like him at 20-1 to win the race, and I like him as a longer shot to perhaps be one of the championship four, if not one of the guys that's is going to be there at the very end of this thing.
Yeah, I'm not so sure what his chances would be if he makes it to Miami. But obviously, if he's in the four, I mean, anybody's got a chance there. But I like the way the schedule lays out for him as far as the tracks they're going to go to in the playoffs.
Well, the biggest thing is right now, it looks to me like Stewart Haas as a whole has picked up their program. Again, you look at qualifying out there, and everybody can say, well, they got the cars trimmed out. Yes, but they got all 4 cars trimmed out. To me, they're sharing information. They've got them fast. And if they follow Bowyer and Harvick's lead on their adjustments for the race, they should be pretty good, pretty much in the hunt even for tonight. So as they move forward, if they can keep that momentum going, I think they got a great chance of making it all the way to Homestead. And the guys that are contending, like Clint Bowyer, I think right now his attitude, his swagger is back, and he can be very dangerous when he gets that going for him.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we know we do not race the stat book, but when you come into a race that's a racetrack that Steve has graded as a B+ in terms of handicap ability, you have to look at some of the past performance and you have to look at some of the statistics as to where to place the wise bets. So had you watched Racers Odds last weekend, you would have heard Jeff Hammond tell you that Kevin Harvick was the odds-on favorite to win in his mind, and therefore he did just that. So right now, we're going to put ourselves on the line once again and give our bets of the week, starting out with the editor of Point Spread Weekly, that, of course, being Steve Mackin. And Steve, out of all these interesting bets this weekend, what's the one you like the best?
My bet of the week is, I'm going to stick with it, Denny Hamlin is Martin Truex. All the momentum on Hamlin's side. Truex just been kind of average lately as far as his standards are concerned.
Okay, so that is Steve's bet of the week with two of really of the heavy hitters in the sport here. Jeff Hammond, what do you say?
I'm going to go with the same one I started with earlier. I'm going Kyle Busch and Joey Logano, with Joey Logano, being able to come out on top. I just really feel like that this is a Penske racetrack, and if anybody can wind up getting it done, Joey can handle Kyle. Even though he's fast in 10-lap average, I like him over it, be able to, be taken down.
So the odds makers don't necessarily agree with Hammond, but that's when you win, right? Is when you go against what the odds say sometimes and use your own knowledge and your own gut feeling. I just had a good feeling about this one from the beginning of the week when you look at the veteran in terms of a hot racetrack going from day into night, how well you communicate with your crew chief, and what may be on the line for a particular driver. When you match up William Byron and Clint Bowyer, I just feel like this one is lopsided in favor of the veteran, going off at even money to William Byron's -120, your pole sitter. And one of the real hungry, most laid-back guys is Clint Bowyer right now. Somebody asked Clint Bowyer earlier in the week if he was nervous now heading into the playoffs, and he said no. Now it's time to have some fun. We're in the playoffs. I was nervous before we made the playoffs, so now he's laid back. And shoot, Steve, maybe that has something to do with it. If a very happy, laid-back Clint Bowyer or any driver may be the most dangerous one.
You have to. The driver's psyche is and team psyche is a huge thing coming into these things. There, if everybody's working together, everybody thinks you can win, you certainly got a better chance to win.
Amen. I love what you're saying right there. That's exactly what makes these guys the threat, is the fact that their whole organization, they feel the vibe, and they're starting to walk the walk and talk the talk.
So as the landscape of sports wagering is changing across the country, we have a groundswell of enthusiasm about it. This is a very big weekend as NASCAR is in Las Vegas, the home of sports wagering around the world, actually. And also, we are beginning the 10-race playoff run where we're going to see exactly who is going to come out the gate fastest and who perhaps could be a wise bet down the road here as we look at a champion. So you saw the odds to win the Cup Championship. You also saw the odds for these guys to win the race. But also right now, guys, when you look at this thing, what do we see tonight? Jeff and Steve, do we see a lot of beating and banging? Do we see a lot of people going for it and gambling, if you will, in Vegas? Steve?
It's certainly the place to do it. I hope we do see some of that.
I think you're going to see that because guys realize they can't afford to get off on a bad foot. And it means you got to get up there in that first stage, try to get you some stage points. Everybody's going to be going for it. Tires will be a problem tonight. The tires are going to have a certain amount of fall off, so getting a chance to get fresh tires late in the race could be the key to winning.
We are Racers Odds. We'll be with you for the rest of this season before every race to give you the information and statistics you need to make the wise wager on NASCAR when it comes to sports betting across the country. Want to thank Pat Patterson, Steve Mackinnon, Jeff Hammond, and everybody involved here as you tune in to us on NASCAR.com, VSiN, PRN, YouTube, everywhere else. Thanks for coming along for the ride, everybody. We'll see you next week.
This has been Racers Odds, a presentation of TRN, the Performance Racing Network.